Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. My name is Andrew Claudio, aka GMAC, and it is time to preview another Knicks matchup, this time on Tuesday night against the Philadelphia 76ers. New York and Philadelphia, two cities that have been bitter rivals over the years. If you are a New York Knicks or a New York Mets fan, you've experienced some playoff success against this city, but all that to the past. Now we have a new chapter with a lot of new faces this upcoming game and this upcoming season, and probably for the foreseeable future after some big moves by both teams this offseason. And I want to start here not with the spirit of tension, not with the spirit of rivalry, but with a spirit of thanks. Because I don't know if you know this, Knicks fans watching, I talk a lot of shit, especially when New York beats Philadelphia. And it may be difficult sometimes to find someone from Philly after I talk a lot of shit to come back on our show and have a civil conversation about a basketball game, which is why I need to not just welcome, but say thank you to the one and only RB Philly Take, not only for returning to Knicks Film School to preview this matchup, but for tolerating the amount of shit I talked during the playoffs. Baseball or basketball. RB, thank you so much for joining me. And I cannot control myself after playoff games. That's just a fact. I do not have that filter yet. I'm new to this whole playoff winning thing. So I want that out the way at the beginning. Thank you so much for joining me, my friend. How are you?
I'm good, man. Listen, you're not the only one. We've been on the wrong end of the stick, but I hate the Knicks. I hate the Mets. And at the end of the day, it's all love for you as a creator and what you guys do, man. I hate your team and I'm pissed. And, obviously tonight is the first battle, but it's about winning the war, right? And I think we're both in it for the long haul. We both, had excitements, but also a lot of disappointments as well. So excited for this one tonight for sure.
Indeed. It is a very mutual hatred of both teams, but respect for each other's work ethics. And that I just want to touch on that real quick, because if you remember last year, I used to ask all my guests this Mount Rushmore of rivals question at the end. And when we got to the Philly version, and I said it was mutual for the Knicks. Like, I know that the Giants Eagles has always been a thing. Obviously, Mets Yankees. You could even go to like the 2009 World Series. Not Mets Yankees, Mets Phillies. And in 2009, the Yankees played the Phillies in the World Series. So other sports have had that, but man, it was non-existent, my hatred for the Sixers going into the playoffs last year. When we met up during the regular season, it's like, I got smoked for every other team in the division. The Nets are little brother. The Boston, seems to always play us in important games. Toronto just made this blockbuster trade with the Knicks. And then there's the Sixers. The Knicks hadn't played the Sixers in the playoffs since 1990. Boy, how one playoff series can change things, RB, as that became a pretty contentious playoff series. Just is it reciprocated on the Philly side? Is New York public enemy number one now?
Absolutely. And, I don't want to compare you guys to the Dallas Cowboys fan base because I think that is the worst fan base in all of sports. I can't say you've topped them, but you got close. You definitely got close after that series and going back and forth with a bunch of Knicks fans on Twitter and on YouTube. It brought out the best and the worst of the fandom, and like I said, at the end of the day, it was a great series. It was hard fought, but here we are starting a new campaign. So the Knicks are definitely at the top of the rivals list this season, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of good matchups this year.
Well, so you guys are starting a new campaign. We're letting our campaign come off the bench right now. He's right now the seventh man for the New York Knicks, and apparently it speaks to the depletion of the depth that I thought the Knicks were going to have after they made one trade, and then the second trade completely shattering that. But we'll get to the Knicks in a second, because one takeaway I did have from that series, and yes, we will talk about Joel Embiid a little later, but Tyrese Maxey emerged to me as a potential superstar. And going into this season, I had the same projections. Like, is this an All-NBA season that could potentially exist? Like, you have two guys that are a little bit more injury prone and on the older side. And lo and behold, the first Knicks game, Tyrese Maxey will not play because of a hamstring injury, which speaks to kind of the state of the Sixers from my perspective. If you could speak to that, just how frustrating has this season been through 9 games? I know Maxey, it's a hamstring injury. This isn't like a season ending thing, but we're 9 games in. We haven't seen the big three play together. this was, I think, the deal going in, that it was going to depend a lot on how often they play together. But how loud is the panic alarm being sounded by Sixers fans?
Yeah, I think, to put it quite simply here, I'm happy for opening day. Today is opening day for the 76ers with Joel Embiid returning. Yes, Tyrese Maxey's out with an injury. I mean, I've covered the Ben Simmons saga. I've covered the James Harden saga. I've covered Tobias Harris. There's been so many storylines, and yet this has been by far the most frustrating sequence that I've had covering the 76ers because not only are they hurt, which is our biggest concern, but you come into the season, they don't tell you the full story. They're ramping up. It's a part of the plan. We're 10 games in. They haven't played one game together. Paul George goes down in the preseason after looking really good. Now Tyrese gets overplayed, dealing with a hamstring. Joel finally comes back, but what's he going to look like? So there's just so much uncertainty for a season that looked like it had a lot of hype to begin. I have not given up hope. But it feels like today finally marks the, okay, now we're back, now we're here. The Sixers have won 2 games, and quite frankly, it took 2 out-of-body experiences to win those games. They probably should be 0-9 right now. That's how bad they've looked. So I don't think they're sounding the alarm, but now it's time to show up. There's no excuse now. I mean, once these guys get together, you have to see results.
So I'm coming off of a Friday night matchup against the Bucks, and the tenor of that pregame was very much like, what's here has to start working. Like Damon Giannis, that's going to have to start working. Gary Trent Jr., Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez, like all these guys are just going to have to start playing better, which does have a hint of not finality, but like there's no, well, when X comes back, we'll be okay. And I get that sense from Sixers fans, and I've tuned into some of your live streams. I've tuned into I've dabbled in Sixers Twitter or Sixers threads as I explore social media options. But it seems like, so let me. This is the direction I want to go with the question, but it's a bit loaded. If I said like these 3 players don't play 40 games together, but they're healthy for night 1 of the playoffs, is that an acceptable reality, or do you think it's gonna take like more than 40 games to gel enough over the course of this 82 game season?
Yeah, I mean, it's a realistic possibility. I actually think that's what we're trending towards, and I might be in opposition to the rest of the fan base. I don't like it at all. I think Joel Embiid has talked about one thing consistently throughout the years, and that's continuity. He wants to have guys that he trusts, that he's comfortable with on the floor. And while I do think the potential of these 3 playing off of each other is huge, you have to get them on the floor. Like early in the season, you have to build a championship identity. It doesn't just happen overnight. We've seen a lot of trades happen at the deadline, and usually they don't work out. Why? Because they don't have enough time to gel. And that's where I look at with the Sixers. They have talent now. They have I think, a well-constructed roster. Maybe need to make some additions at the deadline, but if you don't get these 3 on the floor together, it's almost like having the puzzle pieces, but not really putting them together yet and hoping that you can figure it out on the fly. Whereas the good teams are already building that championship DNA early in the season.
So the interesting thing that you just said is that when trades happen, you have to build chemistry and build that championship DNA, and it may take some time. Knicks fans know that very well after their 4-5 start. Now, I'm saying 4-5 to a content creator who's watched a 2-7 team.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Knicks injuries more so are bench related. Like they just don't have the depth at the moment. Tibbs has become Tom Thibodeau. Like he's playing 6 guys at the moment. The other night he played 6 guys in the second half with like Jericho Sims coming in just to give Cat a breather. So the guys, the main 5, or really the main 6, are getting the chance to build chemistry, but it hasn't looked the best so far. I have high hopes for it. I have high projections for it. I'm curious, as the Sixers were making their moves this offseason, and you saw what was going on in New York, whether it be Hartenstein leaving, the trade for Mikal Bridges to go all in on Villanova, then they trade Dante DiVincenzo and Randall for Cat, and all that Villanova stuff goes out the window. What was your perspective? And like, did it make you more or less afraid of the Knicks going into the season? And
Yeah,
I want the caveat, be as honest as you'd like to, RB.
absolutely. Yeah, that's why I'm here, man. And I
Uh-huh.
already see the chat getting on me. I love it, man. And they're not going to like me after this. So I'll take you very, through my thought process here and how I feel about it. When the Knicks traded for Mikal Bridges, maybe it's my bias as a Nova fan. Like, I was really high on that move. I think Bridges brings the perfect complement to what the Knicks needed and that chemistry like we just talked about with the Nova guys. And when they traded for Cat, I don't know if it was the timing of it or the sequence of it. It just didn't feel natural. Like, it came very late. And although I think Cat was the better move, given the Knicks' needs, they needed a big, right? A guy who can play with Jalen Brunson and, just more of an offensive threat. I also think that it depleted part of that Knicks culture that was oh so present in that playoff series, because you gave up Dante DiVincenzo, who is a glue guy who, correct me if I'm wrong, had 240 something threes in one season.
Yeah, broke the record for a single season in Knicks history. Yeah,
in one season, and was a scrappy defensive piece and just a guy who I felt like fit that mold with the Nova guys. And I mean, didn't Jalen Brunson take a pay cut? Like, something doesn't add up. You know what I mean? So although I like the players and the moves, I think you gave up an integral part of your DNA. And the last thing I'll say is Mikal Bridges, whoever tried to mess with his jump shot form should be in big trouble, because as a big Bridges supporter, let me tell you something. You overpaid for Mikal Bridges. I was cool with it. Like, the Knicks going all in. This is our time. Let's get it done. Sure, that's, a smaller room for error. But we're seeing that from a lot of teams now. Push all the chips in, try to go in. I like that aggressive mentality. But right now, he doesn't seem to be living up to the hype. And I do think the Knicks are going to have a lot of issues on the defensive side of the ball, on the interior. I mean, Joel Embiid tonight should probably have his way with Cat. I mean, they put out a stat. He's given up like 91% around the rim. I'm not as afraid of the Knicks as maybe I was last season. Even though I think they have more talented pieces, there's something about having the right guys that fit together. And that's just my outside take on it.
I don't think you said anything outlandish. First of all, the thing I agree with you the most about is the Mikal of it all. You knew in the moment it was an overpay. It made sense because you were, and Knicks fans who are watching this have heard me say this, but we had Monica McKnight, a WNBA and now NBA legend, on the radio, on the show right after the playoffs last year. And she talked about firsthand seeing the culture be built, like, right in front of her. Like, I've been, covering this team, working with this team closely, and you just see like the winning Villanova DNA work its way over here. And whatever moves they're about to do this offseason, protect the culture at all costs. And the Mikal trade felt like it was a doubling down on culture, because now you've got your last Villanova Infinity Stone.
Yep.
And then instead, right before we never got to see that team. Like, those four guys playing together just never happened. Now, the thing that I know that there is a rivalry with one Joel Embiid and Karl-Anthony Towns, and Cat's defense has been as advertised so far. But the thing I'm a little more open-minded to is the offensive ceiling with Cat it's something I haven't seen since Patrick Ewing on the offensive side of the ball. Like, the guy's shooting 56% from three right now. Like, he's done what the Knicks brought him here to be, which isn't like a rim protector or a defensive back line, which is why Mikal having the start he's had, where his shot, he got off to actually a good start this season shooting, and over those last 4 games hasn't shot very well. But he's got to be a pretty elite first line of defense, because while that Tim Bontemps stat of Cat giving up a ton of points at the rim is real, the Knicks are also giving like 4% of their shot attempts at the rim. Like, they're not giving up a lot of shot attempts at the rim, which speaks to a strong front line that they're going to need to have to hide somewhat Karl-Anthony Towns. Look, it's why I'm so curious about this matchup, how these two teams and their new look works out. No Maxey tonight, so we won't see how they both necessarily pan out at full strength. But I mean, if we just talk a little X's and O's for a second, I'm curious if, I mean, I would imagine that with Drummond and with Embiid now back, like with the centers that they have, they'll be playing some drop coverage against the Knicks, and they've just been torching drop coverage.
Yeah.
Do you? I mean, let's start here. Who guards Jalen Brunson tonight? We're going back to the Oubre matchup, right?
Maybe. I mean, Nick Nurse has kind of just been throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. So honestly, I can't even say that I know. I mean, if I want to be completely honest here, I think Joel might even be on a minute restriction tonight. Paul George has been on a minute restriction. So we really don't know if we're going to see the full potential of this team tonight. Obviously, Maxi's out, but Kyle Lowry's been playing a lot of minutes. You have Caleb Martin, who's been a really pesky defender. I think you could see him on Brunson at times as well. So there's a lot more variety now, a lot of guys to choose from, but it's kind of up in the air, you know, like I really don't know what to expect tonight. I don't think they're going to show all their cards though. I think they're just going to get Embiid worked back into his rhythm a little bit. But I wouldn't say tonight, like, you know, winning this game is the number one priority. You got a back-to-back. We play Cleveland tomorrow. So, you know, the Sixers are gearing up for a pretty tough stretch here after the first part of the season.
Yeah. The tough part with pivoting to an X's and O's conversation is what you just said. Like, it's not even so much that I don't expect Nurse to show us any cards. Like, I am curious what he does, like who ignores Josh Hart. Like that, I think is just a way they're going to play, you know, and they've actually, I think, countered Josh Hart and his spacing concerns pretty well by keeping Josh Hart on the move, whether he's, you know, doing these 45 cuts to open up space for someone to rotate into where he was. I mean, I have to tell you about Josh Hart's ability to offensive rebound.
Yeah.
You know, they're keeping him, you know, active so that way they can take advantage of how teams might guard him, as well as just like bringing him into the action. The thing I'm most curious about is what Embiid looks like, and that leads into what, speaking of contentious and what last season ended up being.
Yeah. And real quick, I just want
to go ahead
as well. Like speaking to the convo that we just had here, like I think Sixer fans are also really intrigued to see what happens, because we still don't have a natural power forward on this team. And right now the Sixers are dead last in rebounding. You know, they're dead last in assist. Like they're not creating much offense at all. But as you know, plotting Joel Embiid into this offense changes everything. Yeah. Like I think what we saw as Sixer fans in the first 9 games is going out the window tonight. Like you have Joel with his gravity in the paint, you know, doubles, triples. Like guys are now going to have much better open looks. They're going to be relied upon to knock down their shots, and you know they're going to have to find ways to create offense, especially without Maxey on the floor. So I just think it's almost like a brand new start tonight for the Sixers, and they're going to need to find ways to keep the Knicks off the glass as well.
It's a reset button. Like that's how I'm looking. It's why like I have the NBA stats page in front of me. Yeah, the Sixers are 4th in offense. Right, it doesn't matter. Like none of those games had Joel Embiid on the floor. So I'm not. That's why I didn't ask you about like, oh, what have you seen so far from you know these numbers? Are they as bad as they look? They probably are. But I also did tune in for the end of the Charlotte game the other night. You weren't kidding about other out of body experiences that seemed to happen at the end of that game. But we'll see now that they got Embiid back. So I'm sure you might be aware of this, but Joel Embiid has launched up the list of Knicks rivals at the moment, whether it be the fact that Mitchell Robinson still is not playing basketball games at the moment, maybe some flying elbows or some well-placed knees during the playoffs last year. I'm not even like, I watched Jalen Brunson. I'm not even that upset with the foul baiting. Like it's just part of the game, you know, like that's what Jalen Brunson did. And my eventual evolution last playoffs was, if Embiid's getting calls, it means Brunson's getting calls. So as long as that is consistent, I'll be okay. Now, I just, how have you dealt with Knicks fans that may, and you know what's the most annoying part? I wanted this to be so much more fun, where we yell about Joel Embiid, and then Marcus Hayes ruined it. So I will respectfully say on the court, like, how have you and Philly fans responded to Knicks fans that may call the on-court version of Joel Embiid dirty, or the spawn of Satan? Like you name it, whatever. The Knicks fans have probably said it.
Yeah, so a couple things, and with all due respect to Knicks fans, I mean, I get it. They're reactionary, they're passionate, but sometimes they're straight up delusional. I point to a couple things. Number one, the Dante DiVincenzo moment back, I think it was on March 10th, right, where he grabs the leg of Kelly Oubre. They act like that never happened.
Okay.
That was a physical thing that could have really injured Kelly Oubre. That went out the window, right, when the Embiid moment happened. Now, I do want to say Embiid was wrong for doing what he did, but at the same time, right? I think on that play it was OG Anunoby who kind of gave him an elbow to the chest, and they were starting to get more and more physical with Embiid, and the tensions were getting to him. So I understand he acted out of character and he was frustrated, but at the same time, he grabbed the right ankle of Mitchell Robinson when it was the left ankle that was injured, that got re-injured. Knicks fans also don't acknowledge that. And the last thing I'll say in regards to the foul baiting, Joel Embiid actually gets fouled down in the block. I mean, he's doubled every possession, despite what Shaq says, right? Shaq says he never gets doubled. That's ludicrous. Watch a Sixers game. Joel's constantly facing doubles and triples. Whereas what Jalen Brunson was doing was more of the, I guess, from the James Harden prototype of let me beat my first defender and lean back into him, which to me was a lot more unbearable to watch as a Sixers fan. But there's no denying that Joel Embiid gets fouled. The reason people are mad at Joel is because he makes 90% of his free throws, whereas Giannis goes to the line a million times and can't make free throws. So it's not harnessed enough in comparison to Joel Embiid.
So I have to defend my Knicks fans for a second. First of all, Mitchell Robinson injured both ankles throughout the playoffs. The first one being on that play, the other time being a couple plays down the court later, when Embiid on the ground again rolled over his ankle, and that was the first initial high ankle sprain. Now Mitch played through that pain the rest of the series, and then in the Pacers series was when it just became unbearable. So, look, Mitch absolutely thinks it was Joel Embiid that injured him, so I'm gonna give him somewhat of the benefit of the doubt here. There was
I'm not absolving Embiid of blame. I don't
think right
to do.
And we were in the building for the Dante moment with Oubre. Wasn't it that so Dante falls and Oubre stands over him and he grabs his leg, right?
Kind of, sort of. I feel like they were jawing a bit, and then Dante grabbed, I think it was both of his legs and pulled a little bit. And then, Oubre kind of fell backwards and they got into a little, word match there. But I'm just saying that was also a dangerous play.
If I acknowledge both are dangerous, can Embiid still be wrong then? Like, I'll just say both were bad, and
both were bad.
Okay.
I agree with that. I agree.
As far as Joel's foul baiting being different from Brunson's, different player, different body. There was a stretch where anytime Joel caught the ball on the low block or on the high block, I knew this was going to end in 2 points because he's either going to do the swipe through on Hartenstein to get it 2 free throws, or the Knicks are going to play back and he's just going to hit a midi. And as a result, he becomes a little bit more unguardable. Sure. But there's no denying that swipe through creates a spirit of him foul baiting to the same extent that look, Brunson as a smaller body, as a Trae Young type, has to create contact in other ways. I think as someone whose team also employs Kyle Lowry, you'll appreciate the ability to draw contact in other ways. Look, part of this is what's good about sports, in that you create these villains and you create these rivals. Again, I just want to reiterate, Marcus Hayes almost made this not fun anymore with his comments and what he wrote. I will keep it strictly basketball and say that it's like, and I just speak on behalf of Knicks fans, it's become Reggie Miller levels of hatred here in New York. And I don't know. So where does Brunson rank? Is Brunson public enemy number one from the Knicks side? Is Josh Hart in there at all? Like, who do Sixers fans direct their hate at the most?
I think it's a mix. I feel like it's almost just more of like the Knicks culture in itself as a whole, like just the way they play and it's just annoying to play against. And I guess the fans and things like that, when they came to the Wells Fargo, and I just think overall, just the rivalry between the two fan bases is where it's kind of directed. I mean, people here in Philly definitely do not like the Jalen Brunson foul baiting. He has become unwatchable per Sixer fans. Like I said, I'm a Nova fan, and I've become to hate a lot of the Nova guys. A lot of it actually was directed at Dante DiVincenzo, but now he's no longer with the team. So I don't think they're as unbearable now, but I just think overall, just the tension between the fan bases. Like I said, that was a hard fought playoff series. I didn't pick the Sixers to win that series, but they honestly, they took it down, as far as they could. And a couple big heroic moments even extended that series. And, maybe if some things go the other way, maybe the Sixers do win that series. So I thought that was one of the best series. And I think it created a good pattern for us to follow moving forward. I like this rivalry.
So the tough part is, like you said, Dante's not here anymore. A lot of like Batum's not in the picture anymore, and I just flatly don't know what version of the Sixers I'm ever going to see when the Knicks play the Sixers. So,
Sure.
I'm here for the rivalry, that's for sure. And whether Embiid is a foul baiter as bad as Jalen Brunson, or whether he's going off for 50, because he's just been in one of those moments where he's unguardable, which I will just also say, whether Brunson is also in one of those unguardable moments. Shout out to Game 4 of that series. These are great players, getting their points. Do you have time? I see the chat at the moment, and I see.
Yeah, I want to respond to the chat because
okay.
I can at least acknowledge that Jalen Brunson is a good player. Do I think he's the number one on a championship team? No, I do not. And I think the Knicks gave up. Yeah, I do. And I think, what we're seeing, especially with the league now, is we're trending more towards the wings and the forwards and even some of the big men as well. So I think Jalen Brunson probably could be a number 2 on a championship team, but I don't think he's capable of being the centerpiece. I think the Knicks have done a good job building around him with some of these really good complementary players. But just to respond to the chat, I can acknowledge Jalen Brunson is a good player. They might not acknowledge Joel as a good player, and I understand the hate. But the facts are the facts. I mean, Joel Embiid is one of the most dominant players in the NBA. And you're going to see straight up from now on the value and the impact that he brings to the 76ers. They can barely win a game without him. And it's like this every single year. So whether it's now or whether it's in, Game 3 where he drops, 50 with Bell's palsy on one leg. Listen, Knicks fans, it is what it is. He is a prominent, dominant force. And he is going to continue to live rent-free. And I hope we play in the playoffs again. I really do, man. I think it would be a great matchup. And, you can't stop him. And Cat is going to get torched by Joel Embiid. Maybe not tonight if he's on a minute restriction. Usually takes about 3 games to get conditioned. But it will happen. And just remember, I told you so.
I don't even know where to begin at the moment. First of all, no Knicks fans are going to be singing the praises or respect for Joel Embiid.
I get it.
Yeah, you get it. Ask us about Maxey. We got plenty of good things to say about him. We left that series terrified of him. It's that's just not happening here in the Big
I understand, but at least I know you acknowledge Joel's dominance on the floor. Like, you can acknowledge his presence, right?
Yeah. I'll say this. There were moments during the playoffs last year where, look, the X's and O's, he's like one of the most unguardable players, but because his whistle is so, I don't want to say it's inconsistent, because again, Brunson was getting the same whistle, but contact, because of the way, he did play with James Harden for 2 years. There is a world where he knows how to draw contact. That 50-point game you're talking about, he took one shot from the field in the fourth quarter. There was 11 or 12 from the line, and he basically got to that 50 points by getting to the line, knowing every time I turn, I'll just swing at Isaiah Hartenstein's arms, or I'll swing at Mitch. Well, Mitch was out of the game by that point. Precious Achiuwa's arm, or Anunoby, and it became a free throw time, which is why it's less angst in his foul baiting. And it's like, Jalen, do it better. If they're gonna give us this whistle, you have to match him free throw for free throw. I do agree with you that I hope that we get another playoff series. Unfortunately, for Sixers fans, it would have to be in the first or second round because of the whole history of not getting to the third round of the playoffs. So,
well, and that's
not that I can speak.
No, you're right. Yeah, exactly. Knicks fans, don't forget, that Game 7 where you got wiped. That was a blown opportunity. And trust me, I know about blown opportunities. They're hard to come by. They're hard to get back to. It almost felt like the Sixers-Knicks series should have been a second or third round series with how good it was compared to the rest of the competition. But it's hard to get back, and it's hard when you waste opportunities. And I guess the question I had for you as well was,
yeah, go ahead.
Are you concerned, like, with the little room for error now as a Knicks fan? You trade, I believe the Knicks only have like one draft pick in the first round that they own in the next 4 years. And, now all the dominoes have to fall the right way. I feel like we're seeing two kinds of different approaches with team building. It's either cash everything in, unload the tank, and get the assets and hope it all works out, or be a little more conservative, try to hit with those draft picks and let them play early on. So as a Knicks fan, you've obviously taken the former there. Are you concerned, like, with where you're at right now? What if things don't go right, or maybe OG only plays 40 games this year? Wow. Or, I think it's a huge concern, if I'm being honest.
I think the biggest concern I have is it's just flatly not health related. I do recognize that OG has a history. And look, this is why I also liked the team a little bit better before the Cat trade. I'm open to the Cat trade creating a higher ceiling. And that's really it. What they did was, by going all in the way they did, they created a higher ceiling. I think if all breaks right, this team can win a title, and a lower floor. All breaks wrong, this team is a first round exit, maybe a play-in exit, and Tom Thibodeau gets fired. Like, sure. They've now, they had a base level of, like, what you're getting when you play the Knicks. Their identity was like, this is very simple, but like, they try harder than you. Like, that was the bitch that was to play the Knicks last year.
Yeah.
And they're finding a new identity this season.
So far, I think that can only take you so far.
Which is why you need, like, an elite player like Jalen Brunson to be on the scoring heater that he was last year. But man, when you have Isaiah Hartenstein as your back line of defense, one of the better and more underrated players until OKC gave him a back and properly rated him potentially. Yeah. You have Josh Hart doing, like, all the little things with the way he did last year. Anunoby, probably one of the best off-ball defenders in the sport. Like you said, you've now created this ecosystem around Brunson that allows him to succeed. They've given up that identity of, like, that backline level of defense, and now they're trying to win another way, playing 5 out. They're not going to have, unless Embiid turns into, like, not Embiid, unless Cat turns into, and I want to be gracious, because he was not brought here to be a backline rim protector. Like, he was brought here to be elite offensively, but, like, they're not going to have a top 10 defense this year. They got to get to 15, 16. That's the way that they're going to be able to succeed. And right now they have the second best offense. So one side of the floor, they're honestly still figuring it out offensively, and it's already the second best offense. So it's different. Am I worried about what the floor could potentially look like? Absolutely, because they don't have many pivots. When they've lost in playoff series in the past, like when they lost last year, it's like, all right, well, the pick of the litter, like what they do this offseason. 2 years ago when they lost to the Heat, same thing. Like, when they the Donovan Mitchell summer where the Knicks thought they were getting them. Now it's like, all right, new coach. Like, that's the pivot. There's no big blockbuster trade unless the price for Giannis comes down significantly. Like, they're not able to enter into any big sweepstakes anymore. Where I am more confident, if you look at what the Suns did this offseason, like going and getting Plumlee, going and getting Tyus Jones. Like, Windhorst made this point the other day. Like, you can use your CAA influence and maybe the New York influence to attract players in on your vet minimum that want to go compete for a title, and that's how you build out your depth. We remember the Miami Heat of the LeBron, Wade, and Bosh as, like, yeah, they went to the finals 4 times. It was year 2 when Shane Battier got there, year 3 when Ray Allen got there. Like, they built out that team over time. And that's what the Knicks are now looking at, which is why, and this is honestly, I think, true for the Sixers. Like, this is year 1 of this new experiment. Now, the Sixers have more options, but the Knicks, like, this is year 1 of this experiment. And they're all pretty young, so this is year 1 of, like, 3 or 4 years. So, we'll see what happens. I hope that long answer answered your question.
No, it does. I just think, at least from the fan perspective, sometimes it's hard to do that, especially with where the Knicks say we're at last year and now not taking a step back, but if it doesn't work this year, trying to be more patient. And I think where they differ from the Sixers is the mindset is PG is 34. Joel Embiid is only getting older, only getting more injury prone. So it feels like you got to put it together in year one. Maybe that's not the case. And, this is a 2-3 year window, but at least from Sixer fans' mindsets, it's, we want to see the results now, especially with how the last 5-6 years have gone. And I think that's why it's been such a frustrating start for this team because there hasn't been much transparency. Yes, they're trying to keep them finally healthy for the playoffs, but, new faces in the building, a lot of turnover. You still have to, again, learn how to play with each other. So that's kind of the struggle we're going with now. How much do they play them? Does Embiid play back-to-backs? It's a tough conversation because I kind of see it on both sides.
Yeah. It's why this matchup is fun, and it's the first time they've played each other since the playoffs, and it's national television, but we're not going to learn anything significant from this matchup. In fact, what might happen if the Sixers win is the sky that continues to fall in New York. So since the Mets defeated the Phillies in that playoff series, the Mets got eliminated by the Dodgers. The Yankees got eliminated by the Dodgers. The Giants and Jets eliminated themselves, and the Knicks got off to a 4-5 start to the season. Wow. Shout out to the New York Liberty for. I know this is like I'm reading off a wish list for you. It's like, oh wow, New York losing. That sounds awful. Oh no. It's exactly what you want.
It's beautiful. All I'm saying is, look, the Liberty, shout out to them. Shout out to Sabrina. Mm-hmm. They might be more competent than the Knicks. I'm just being honest.
Easy. Well, okay. Technically, they're champions. So I actually don't know if that's that much of a knock. Yes, I would hope a champion is more competent than the Knicks, although I hope the Knicks get there one day. I like the ceiling of this team. I believe in the ceiling of this team. It's just going to take a while for it to eventually gel. And we've just talked about it. Like these things take time. RB, thank you so much for joining me. I wish you all the best of luck. I wish your team teams, plural. I wish them all the worst luck and favor possible in all games that they play in the future. I wish your team good health, and I wish my team good health because they have to play your team in the future. And I hope we do this again when everybody has got all their guns back.
Absolutely, man. Look, I hope we all get healthy. Hope we get on the right track. I honestly do hope both these teams meet again. That was a really fun playoff series. All the tension aside, it was very competitive, and I would like to see it fully healthy, but that's a big if when it comes to Philly and New York sports right now. So, Andrew, always appreciate you having me on, man. Respect the platform, even the fans in the chat who have been coming at me. I'm used to it, man.
Giving it to you right now, man.
I'm used to it, and I can take it. And I know at the end of the day, like I know the teams and how it's going to progress, and I think the season will turn around for the both of us. And likewise, man, I respect the platform, and I hope nothing but the best for the platform. But when we play, man, I hope the Sixers just absolutely destroy the Knicks. And I hope Joel has a good game tonight. I hope he gets back in his flow. I'm not expecting too much, but I do think it'll be a good tip of the iceberg tonight.
You've hinted at it. This will be my last question. Like you said, a minutes limit, like 20, 25. Like what are we looking at tonight?
Man, I mean, the Embiid situation has been so foggy. I don't know. I mean, they've had Paul George on a 25-minute restriction. I mean, even the other night he was up to 33 and the game went to overtime, and Nurse said it was a tough decision, but I had to pull him. I'm not going to let him play more. So I would probably say around 20 to 25, get Embiid back in his flow, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they let him just go out there and fly, and Embiid says, don't take me off the court. I just don't know, man. I don't know.
What's that like, by the way? A coach thinking long-term and not playing their players a ton of minutes.
Oh, it's beautiful
for the safety and betterment of the team. Well, what's
beautiful.
That like?
It's absolutely beautiful. And look, Nurse has not had the best start to the season, but I can't blame the guy when he's had his back against the wall, when he's had this star out and then this star out and this star out. So I think Nurse will look a lot better. I very much enjoy Nick Nurse as the coach of this team, and I think he'll be the one to get them on the right track. But yeah, man, the Knicks, Tom Thibodeau has to be careful. I mean, we're seeing all these injuries now around the league, and we're 10 games in. it like long term should be the priority. And we'll see if he does it.
That, I think, is a good place to end because it's the one thing that is unanimous amongst Knicks fans. They agree with you on that one specific point, RB, that Tibbs needs to be careful. And look, I'm not even asking for Tyler Kolek or Pacome Dadier or any of these rookies to be like earn rotation minutes. Just breathers. I don't need consecutive 24-minute stints from Anunoby and Bridges and Josh Hart in November. Playoff time, go nuts. Play 6 guys. We are a long ways away from that. So we'll see what happens in this matchup.
Yeah, I think we need to remember it's not the 1990s anymore. Different age, different generation, different types of builds with players, and just different management overall. So it's a different game nowadays.
Yep. I say all of this knowing that push comes to shove, you're going to see the same 5 guys on the court for a lot of the second half for the Knicks tonight. So we'll see what happens. RB, thank you so much for joining me. We obviously like joked around a lot today, and maybe some even just very real in our hatred for each other's teams. But as I said, I do respect what you built and your platform, and always love linking up. So thank you so much for joining me. And thank you to everybody for tuning in to another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. If you dig it, please head over to iTunes, drop a 5-star rating and a review. If you're watching, please head over to the YouTube channel and like this video. Remember to subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow, same time at noon, with another live version of the Knicks Film School pregame show, previewing the matchup against the Chicago Bulls. We got a back-to-back tonight. Even more of a reason to conserve minutes. But until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the game tonight, and I will speak with you soon.